Welcome to Unscripted with Russo. For our podcast, we decided to explore the people behind the narratives. I'll introduce decision makers and influencers and find out the intimate story behind their rise to success. Welcome to another episode of Season 5 of Unscripted with Russo. I'm Ashley Russo, and I am being joined today by Donald Outing, the Vice President for Equity and Community at Lehigh University, and also a fellow board member with me on United Way of the Greater Lehigh Valley. So Donald, I'm so excited to have this opportunity to chat with you in more detail, just the two of us, because we're often on a Zoom with like 30 boxes. So welcome.
Well, thank you, Ashley. I'm very honored and excited to be here as well.
So you're at Lehigh University, but before you got to Lehigh, you have had a very illustrious career and a very fascinating, interesting life. And I want to talk a little bit more about that and let people get to know you. So tell me a little bit about where you grew up, your family structure, and what kind of kid were you? If you were to describe 7 or 8-year-old Donald, what were you like?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. So I grew up in Baltimore, Maryland. And for the most of my childhood, I was raised by my mother, who was a single parent. My father was always there, a part of our life, but they just weren't together. And grew up inner city Baltimore. We lived, I would say, below the poverty line. And my mother really took on a number of odd jobs as she put herself through night school to become a nurse. I'm one of 6 children that she raised, 5 boys and 1 girl, my poor sister.
Wow. What is a household with 5 boys like? I come from a big family also, and I'm the oldest, but not 5 boys. That's a lot of energy and testosterone in a room.
That's a lot of energy.
That's also a lot of, that's a lot of food. You talk about living below the poverty line. That's a tough amount of kids to provide for.
Well, absolutely. So we all learned how to cook. My mother made sure, because we had to take turns cooking, and we all learned how to stretch food, where we could take, you could take a chicken and make it last for some time. So
it's funny, Donald. When I was a new mom, and sort of starting to cook for toddlers and things like that. I only have 2 kids, so God bless your mom. I had this idea for a long time that I would make a leftover cookbook, because I was so keen on that concept of what's left and what do you do with it? Or you've got something in a Tupperware and what do you do with it? And so I sort of prided myself for several years on figuring those things out. And it's amazing. And then I would consult with my cousin-in-law, is a one of 10. Her mother has some recipes, boy, that you can feed an army. On a history.
I still can't throw anything away. I mean, I don't care what it is. I will turn it into a stew, a casserole. Everything gets used.
I'm with you. I'm all with you on that. And where did you fall in the family?
I was number 2.
Number 2. Okay.
I since lost my oldest brother.
I'm sorry for that.
Yeah, complications due to diabetes. So we lost him several years ago.
Oh gosh, I'm sorry to hear that. That's really tough. That is really tough. And the rest of your family, have you guys remained close? And do you get together? You hang out?
We get together very close, and it's not a year goes by that maybe 2020 was the exception, but we'll get together 5-6 times a year for various occasions. Every year I host 4th of July at my house. I got another brother that hosts Thanksgiving. Then we traveled on Christmas, just Easter. It's always some sort of, we find some occasion to get together as a family unit. And that's the extended family as well. All the nieces and nephews show up as well.
I love that. And you mentioned tradition and family. What were some traditions that you had as a family? Even maybe things that you did that were regular that you knew you could kind of count on as a kid, or that your mom made special, regardless of the circumstances?
Whatever mom fixed was really a special occasion, especially if mom fried chicken. I mean, it was just something about the smell of fried chicken in our home. We knew we were going to be eating good that day. It excited us. But it was, I have to really point to my paternal grandmother, Pauline Epps. It was a tradition, no matter what we were doing on Sundays, everybody showed up at grandma's house for dinner. and everybody, grandma would supply most of the food, and a lot of the church folks would come over, and we would eat good. It was a good time to get a good meal, to be with family and community. So, then, the church community was a really big part of our life.
Sunday afternoon dinner was huge for us also. I would say we would go to church, we'd come home, we'd have a rest, which I really think was just my mom's way of preparing the food without us underfoot, but it was mandatory, and then have a meal. And it's funny how those things resonate with you and are so important in creating that family closeness that you clearly still have today. What about activities? What kind of student were you? What kind of activities did you do?
I was described as very intelligent. However, I was not motivated academically. I love sports. I was involved in all kinds of different sports. And as a matter of fact, all through my childhood, I thought I was going to grow up and be some sort of professional athlete. I was always in these very gifted and talented programs, but I got by just by natural ability academically. I didn't really put too much effort into it until later in my life. But up and through my high school years, it was sports. And and I'll have to be honest, it was the sports that maintaining my eligibility for sports that forced me to concentrate on my academics, because I never wanted to miss out on a semester or anything like that because of my grades.
Yeah, that's always, yeah, it's so interesting too to hear that, because I think often you hear with sports, things like fraternities and sororities or other organizations that do have like a requirement for academics being a motivator until you kind of find your thing. Yeah, that's interesting to me. You ended up going to the military academy, is that correct?
Well, no,
you went to the Naval Academy.
That's right. I attended the United States Naval Academy.
So help me bridge though for a second, because I thought where you were going to go with academics was my husband's story, which was Joseph is very bright, and it was always, he's too busy. So he was like the bouncing kid that needed to clap the erasers and have all the extra chores in the classroom.
Yeah.
And so, go from high school and you're playing sports and academics to where you end up at the United States Naval Academy studying mathematics. I mean, that's so incredible and amazing, and I would think really challenging.
Well, I grew up in the shadows of Annapolis, but had never visited. I mean, growing up in Baltimore, but again, being very poor, you never really left Baltimore. But I was actually a very good athlete as well. So I was recruited by Bear Bryant in Alabama. Matter of fact, my good friend Mike Pitts, who recently just passed away, played for the Philadelphia Eagles for a number of years, and also for the Patriots for a number of years, ended up going to Alabama, and I was supposed to go with him. Well, the Naval Academy came along. George Welch's Naval Academy came along and visited my house to convince me that Annapolis is where I wanted to go. I visited Annapolis, fell in love with the place, loved seeing the midshipmen in uniform, loved the whole idea of military service. And I decided that's where I was going to go, pursue my academic as well as my athletic pursuits there in Annapolis.
Wow. Well, thank you so much. I mean, that's an amazing service and an amazing opportunity that you seized. Was there ever any question from your mom, your dad, your family as to that choice? Was that something unique for your family? Because sometimes you hear, but there's military families, and then there's someone who this is the first one.
Yeah. I don't, as from my mom's perspective, I think she was happy that I chose the military academy. Like I said, I was slightly undisciplined as a child, and she thought the military would be a great fit. I was that person who had a lot of energy. I played 4 sports in high school just because I needed to be active. I was a very active young child, and the military was just the perfect fit for me. It just resonated with me. So I think she was very happy I selected that.
And how did mathematics become?
Yeah.
You always good at math? Did you love math? Did you?
Yes, and yes. I was. The one thing I loved about academics was mathematics. It was the one true discipline that made sense to me because it was something that could be proven. It wasn't ruled by the grand who says. you could prove things through theorems and corollaries, and I loved that. I remember my first geometry class in junior high school, I believe it was. I spent all night on these geometry theorems, and they weren't expecting us to really go through and prove anything, but I just fell in love with them. Now, I also, my mother was very forceful proponent for academics and for education. So she ensured we went to the top public high school in Baltimore, and that's the Baltimore Polytechnic Institute. And so it was at Poly where we learned about engineering, because Poly was founded on the disciplines of preparing young men, at the time, young men, to become future engineers. So I thought I was going to go off being an engineer. As a matter of fact, my major at the Naval Academy when I first went was engineering. But I was sitting in my engineering courses, and I would ask the professor so many questions about the equations that they wanted us to memorize, like, where does that come from? How do you derive it? One of the professors after class came up and they told me, so, son, you may want to think about majoring in mathematics instead. And I said, you can major in that? I thought it was just a subject you learn to be an engineer. When I found out you could major in mathematics, it was a done deal at that point.
That is so amazing. Well, I was okay at math. And I say that I did all right, but when I got into the business world and dollar signs went in front, all of a sudden it made a lot more sense to me.
Oh yeah.
both my children have taken personal finance in high school, and I found that to be super applicable because it teaches sort of those real world skills of why math matters. But I'm always fascinated by something like that choice and how that resonates with you. And I love that you loved it from such an early age.
Oh yeah, it made sense.
Did you see your mom going to school as an influence in your desire to pursue an education?
Oh, absolutely. We saw what my mom was putting herself through to obtain a degree to better her quality of life. And she was doing it for herself and for her family. So that image became very important to all of us. We all knew, although we were first generation college, we all knew we were going to college. That was the expectation from day one. So we were always preparing to go to college in some way.
All right. Well, you know what, Donald, we're going to take a quick break because when we come back, I want to hear a little bit about your career because it's pretty amazing and there's a lot to share. And then, of course, we need to talk a little bit about Lehigh University and the Lehigh Valley. So you're listening to Unscripted with Russo. We'll be right back.
As a mother of two, I know it can be tough to find activities that everyone will enjoy. Luckily, the Lehigh Valley has so many ways to treat your family without breaking the bank. You can experience cool discoveries at the Da Vinci Science Center or all aboard the WK&S Railroad train for an afternoon adventure. There's fun around every corner of the Lehigh Valley, and you can uncover it all on Discover Lehigh Valley's website. Visit discoverlehighvalley.com for more information.
Welcome back to Unscripted with Russo. I'm Ashley Russo, and we are being joined today by a brilliant guest, Donald Outing, the VP for Equity and Community at Lehigh University. Donald, thank you so much for being here. You've been talking about growing up in Baltimore, being a very busy kid who sort of stayed on the straight and narrow with academics to keep up with sports, but ended up at the United States Naval Academy studying mathematics, which is incredible. Tell us a little bit about what was next.
Yeah, so sure. So what was next was family and going off into the Navy. Thought I was just going to pursue this career in the Navy, but things changed a little bit in that there were some opportunities I wanted to pursue. So I actually got out the Navy for all the wrong reasons. I got out the Navy because I thought what I wanted to do for a living was make a lot of money. All my Naval Academy graduates, fellow peers and fellow graduates, they were going off in business and industry. And I thought, well, maybe that's what I should do because they're very successful. I had no plan other than I had a degree, had a pretty good education. I was just going to go off and make money for a living. I was miserable. I missed military service. It was something that really was a part of my identity by that point. This was about now 4 or 5 years into my military service. So I actually wanted to get back in the service, could not get back into the United States Navy, because at the time the Navy was drawing down its forces, but the Army was looking for mid-career officers to join because they were actually growing, expanding their forces. So I applied to a program to go through officer candidate school. So I went through a second commissioning source to get my commission in the United States Army.
All right. How many people really, I'm just curious, I wonder if there's a statistic out there, speaking of the mathematician, that have served in multiple branches of the US military service?
Yeah, I think there's a number that may have served, but not that way.
That way. Well, that's so interesting. And I like the fact that your mother was excited about you going originally to the Naval Academy because she felt the structure would be good for you. And it turns out, as moms often are, she was correct that you really, that whole lifestyle resonated with you. What was it about military service that really spoke to you, and you feel, what did you take away from that experience that you brought into your career in higher education?
Well, I could talk about the structure, quality of life, and things like that. But I'll be honest with you. When it comes down to is the people, the type of people you get to work with, the community of people you get to work with, it's like no other. You've got people that have, every person that serves has this sense of service, and that's why they came to it. And they are serving not just for their own self-benefit, but they're serving for some sort of greater cause. And each one has their own cause. Some it's about their unit, their fellow peers in their unit. Some is about God and country. But it's all have a passion for this. And so that's really, I think, what inspired me to want to stay a part of this unit.
I love that. And I think that is the type of connection that really keeps people, brings someone in and then keeps them where they are. And I have to say, on some level, that's a huge reason that we stayed in the Lehigh Valley. Yeah. For us, what we found here in the community and people's desire to make this community truly better was so noticeable when I moved here. And I only moved from New Jersey and New York, but I thought, this is unique what's going on in this valley. So have you found that? I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but I feel like there's a connection there between your military service. You go on to get a master's, you go on to get a PhD in mathematics. I can't even fathom, as someone who barely made it through high school math, what that looks like, but it sounds very impressive and hard to me. I'm a humanities person, Donald. So, but tell me about the transition to higher education and what that required of you skill-wise and also visionary-wise of what you'd found in the military that you now maybe find in higher ed.
So my transition to higher ed actually occurred while I was in the Army. So the Army saw that I had a degree in mathematics, and there aren't many people of color or those who identify as Black or African American that have degrees in mathematics or the mathematical sciences. And they were looking for professors at the U.S. Military Academy at West Point at the time, and asked if I would go back and get a master's degree so I could go to West Point and be an instructor there. It was supposed to just be a temporary duty, 3 to 5 years, and then I would return to the force again and teach and use my advanced degree to help the Army on some sort of operation research projects and things like that. Well, I raised my hand, said, absolutely. I went to Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, got my master's. Again, falling in love with just the idea of getting paid to study mathematics was just awesome to me. Went to U.S. Military Academy at West Point, taught in the math department there for, this was 97, so now for 3 years I've been teaching in there when one of my now mentors and now friends, or two people actually, Gary Cron, now General Gary Cron, and General Chris Arney, who were the head of the department there, said, hey, we would like you to go back and get a PhD and become a professor here at West Point, a full-time professor. Hey, first I should say, it wasn't, hey, let's do it. I was like, I've done 20 years now, I'm ready to get out and do something else. And they were like, well, fill out this paperwork anyway, because we still want you to consider it. Did it, filled out the paperwork, and then Gary Cron called me in his office. I remember this well. It was 2000, and he showed me a headline story from the Washington Post. 3 Black women graduated with their PhDs from the University of Maryland. I had no idea why that was such headline news. I was just ignorant to the issues of the underrepresentation of women and minorities in the mathematical sciences at that time. But he knew that would capture my attention, and that would be the hook that he would need to convince me that I needed to go back and get my PhD. When I realized that this was significant, I felt it was my duty, because I had this gift, this ability to go back, get my PhD, and pursue a career academically and inspiring other young people to pursue mathematics and the mathematical sciences as well. So I went back to RPI, I got my PhD, finished in 2004, went to West Point and taught at West Point in the greatest department in the United States Army, for math department in the United States Army, for the next 20 years.
That's absolutely incredible. And when you mention seeing people of color in mathematics, in the military, in a way that perhaps had not been so popular or seen previously, was that the thing that opened the door to really specializing in diversity? Yeah. I mean, is that when you said there's something happening here? Tell me about that shift, and maybe was there a moment? Was it this moment that you got this article? Was it something else? And how did that shift what you started to focus on in your career at West Point that you've now brought to Lehigh?
So, I was so fortunate. I was so fortunate and blessed to have so many people in my life at different times that caused me to go research and think and understand the underlying issue. So it was Gary Cron who showing me that article. That's the reason that I went and got my PhD in mathematics. When I got back to West Point, there were people like Lyda Barrett, first woman professor in the math departments there, Anita Gandolfo, who taught in our Center for Teaching Excellence there, who exposed me more to this underrepresentation issue and to trying to understand it. What I was hearing was not satisfying to me. And I heard the underrepresentation issue had to do with ability and choices that women were making and all this. None of that made sense, because all the people I knew in mathematics, that wasn't the case. So as I began to better understand why there was an underrepresentation, why, through this very patriarchal structure, why it was so difficult for women and other underrepresented groups to really pursue mathematics as a discipline, I began to try to develop tactics and strategies to encourage and inspire others to pursue the discipline that I loved as well. So it was, and it led to me founding the Center for Leadership and Diversity in STEM, Science, Technology, Engineering, and Mathematics at West Point. And because of my work there, because of the research, it also eventually led me to become the inaugural Chief Diversity Officer at West Point under Superintendent Bob Caslin, who saw the work I was doing within the STEM sciences and said, hey, we would like you to help advance our diversity work more broadly across the academy and in the Army. So went to DOMI, the Defense Equal Opportunity Management Institute, to become certified as a diversity practitioner, and also certified as an equal opportunity manager as well as a certified mediator, so that I could help with these issues, help the Army and the Department of Defense with these issues. So really, that's how I ended up becoming a full-time professional practitioner, was because of the research I was doing and trying to understand some of the problems that existed with underrepresentation in the mathematical sciences.
Is there a connection for you between the data that's gathered in equity, community building, and mathematics that kind of makes that professional connection?
Yeah. So, like
I'm going to imagine data gets you pretty excited.
Data gets me excited. So when I told you I didn't like the reasons that I was hearing as to why there was this underrepresented, the reason why is because the data didn't support that.
Sure.
so for example, when I was in the math department there, I was the first professor, academy professor in the Department of Mathematics, appointed as academy professor in 2009 is when my appointment came. That's a full-time professor of mathematics at West Point. I was the first African-American to hold that position. And I was shocked by that. And some of the reasons why is, well, there's not, the pool is shallow. There's not a lot of talent out there. So what are you talking about? I know I'm with Black mathematicians all the time. I know them. I know the field, the community. The data did not support the narrative. So yes, it was the data that really drove me to what I was trying to do was counter the narrative of the underrepresentation narrative that was out there as to why women and underrepresented minorities were not participating in the mathematical sciences.
Well, I am not good at generating data, but I am a person who absolutely loves data, and I love data-driven decisions. So I fully understand and love that you use the data and your mathematical skills to truly drive change. I'm going to take a quick break, but when we come back, I do want to hear how Lehigh University and the Lehigh Valley lured you here and what your experience has been like. So everybody stay tuned. You're listening to Unscripted with Russo. We'll be right back.
Family time is about creating memories together to last a lifetime. And what better way to bond than spending time at some of the amazing attractions the Lehigh Valley has to offer? You can cheer on the Lehigh Valley Phantoms or take a walk on the wild side at the Lehigh Valley Zoo. However you enjoy spending your free time, there's something here for every member of the family. For more information on things to do in the Lehigh Valley, head over to Discover Lehigh Valley's website at discoverlehighvalley.com.
Welcome back to Unscripted with Russo. If you are just joining us, please rewind so that you can hear the beginning of the conversation that we've been having with Donald Outing, the VP for Equity and Community at Lehigh University. Donald, it's been awesome to have you here. Thank you so much for your incredible military service and all that you have done to transition your life from mathematician to doing things with diversity and community and equity that are just so incredible. And now you're doing it here at Lehigh University in the Lehigh Valley. So tell me about how you made the transition from West Point and a career in the military to being here at Lehigh.
Well, as I told you, Bob Caslin selected me as his inaugural Chief Diversity Officer back in 2013-ish is when I started, officially probably 2014. And it was there that I honed my skills as a diversity practitioner and understanding, what are some of the key strategies? What are the underlying issues in advancing diversity in complex organization and inclusion as well, a complex organization? I love the work, and as I was doing the work right around 2016, realizing that Caslin's going to retire at some point. Also recognizing that by this time I've retired from the military and I'm a civil servant at this time, and decided I want to leave public service. I put it out there to some search firms that I was interested in looking at other opportunities in higher education. Now, understand, there was a point where I thought I was going to follow the typical pathway to become a college president. I was going to become a dean and then a provost and then a president, maybe do some administrative work in student affairs or something like that. But it was 2016, during the Patriot League conference that Lehigh was hosting at West Point, that I met John Simon. John Simon, 14th president at Lehigh at the time, had just been installed, I think, around 2015. And he was looking to stand up a diversity and inclusion infrastructure at Lehigh. And we had a conversation. I remember the conversation was November 23rd, 2016 at a Panera Bread there in New Windsor, New York. He was traveling through the area, stopped and had a conversation with me. And it was a time for us to meet and talk and for him to share his vision on. I wanted to know why he was doing it. Why was he doing it now? How long was he going to be there to see this through? And it was hearing his vision that inspired me. I want to be at Lehigh to help this president fulfill this vision that he sees for Lehigh. And it was a Lehigh, he had just signed on to the American Talent Initiative, and he saw this as an opportunity to really open up an elite institution like Lehigh University to groups of people that have been historically underrepresented, first generation, limited income students, more women, more persons of color. He saw this, as Lehigh was going to grow, he wanted to grow the undergraduate student body by 1,000 people. He saw this 1,000 new students coming in being better representation of the nation. And Lehigh and the Lehigh Valley were going to become the focal point for this vision. And I signed on in a minute. I was like, I'm interested. I competed for it. Fortunately, I was selected by the selection committee to be the inaugural vice president of Equity Community, and I've been happy ever since.
Well, we are so excited to have you here. And as I mentioned at the very top, you and I are fortunate enough to serve together on the United Way of the Greater Lehigh Valley Board. And it seems such a fitting time for these things to be intersecting in the Lehigh Valley, between the work that Lehigh does, the work that the hospital networks do, the work that United Way is doing. So many nonprofits are contributing. Tell me a little bit about how you see the landscape around diversity, equity, and inclusion, as well as where it intersects with community in this community in the Lehigh Valley.
Yeah, I have to say that, since moving to the Lehigh Valley, I thought this was just going to be a temporary stopover on my way. This is home for me now. I got to meet phenomenal people here in the Valley that really care. Some of the first people I was introduced to, and I credit one of our public affairs folks, Adrienne Washington. I believe she goes by Adrienne McNeil now. But at the time, Adrienne Washington introduced me to people like David Lewis and Tom Harrington over at Valley Youth House. Of course, David is our is head of the United Way Greater Lehigh Valley here, and others in the area, and the work that they were doing. And it was everything I was hearing and everything I was receiving as I was meeting people was that, hey, we believe this is a great community, but we aspire to do better. And so they were questioning and wanting to figure out where are the gaps and how can we do better? How can we be more equitable? I mean, include Joe Roy, an amazing superintendent. Thomas Parker, I got to meet over in Allentown, and the work they were doing over, just on and on. Every time I met someone here in the Valley, their heart, their passion, they wore it on their sleeve. And it was all about making community better for individuals, for the collective. And Lehigh was a part of that. Lehigh, the relationship that Lehigh had with Donchez, Bob Donchez, the mayor at the time. And it was, I could just go on and on as I was just overwhelmed.
Yeah, I'm in full agreement with you. And I think it's, certainly our work that we do has been born out of the amazing stuff happening in the Lehigh Valley. And I remember when we started the Peak TV, many people, it was 2012, because this is our 10th anniversary coming up this year, said, are there really enough stories to do a weekly news magazine show about the Lehigh Valley? And at the time I said, I don't know, but I think so. So let's see. And I'll tell you, the list is very long. For 2022, we already have dozens of stories lined up for our summer season. So it's amazing to see the way this community has grown and changed over the years. And I think in this particular area, you mentioned questioning, and people's desire to understand and to learn and to come together, I feel has been impressive, especially over the last couple of years. And certainly people in roles that you now have play a huge part in that. Tell me about the Valley at large. What do you like to do here? What have you found? You spent time in New York, you spent time in Baltimore. What is it about the Lehigh Valley you love? What do you do in your free time?
Eat.
Well, I have to tell you, Donald, I moved here long before there were about 3 good restaurants in 2005. So
I'm going to tell you,
now it's unbelievable, right?
I'm coming up on 5 years, my 5-year anniversary on February 1st here in the Valley, and I'm still discovering new places. The restaurants here are amazing. It's rare that I'll try out a new spot and it doesn't have a phenomenal chef back in the kitchen. So I'm a big foodie. So I love the food here and the food choices here in the Valley, but then I also love to play golf. That was another thing I was surprised by. I mean, you can't kick a can down the road without running into a golf course, a nice golf course somewhere.
All right. Well, little inside Russo secret, Donald, is that while we moved here because my husband works for St. Luke's, what really made the decision between various medical fields and places he could have gone after his fellowship was the golf. So it was the opportunity to play some good golf in this area that was evident. That's huge. So you excited? Senior Open's coming up.
Oh yeah. So hopefully we're going to get filled here. So I've had a chance to walk a few golf courses, going a few pro. I like following the pros around, but I want to see this Phil Mickelson place. I'm hoping he shows up.
Up close, right? I hear you. I'm with you on that one. All right, we'll have to keep our sightings, keep a connection if we have a sighting of him out here. Good. Well, tell me, what else do you do in your free time? Have you found with the students? You know, it's interesting because we have many people, of course, who are from here or who have come here to work and live, but you work with a student population who are sort of coming here for an education and often in their summers and their breaks going back to wherever they are from. How does that influence the way that you see the area, and what do you learn from the students?
Yeah, so, most of us are in higher education because of the students. I mean, we just love being with their energy and passion, and their grand desires and hope for the future. You just love being around that. So, and the Lehigh Valley period has phenomenal students all over. I just love the students at Lehigh. One of the things I like doing also, though, it's something that I think is underappreciated here, and that's athletic events here. I mean, whether it's going to a basketball game, which I love doing here, going this season, going to a basketball game in the evening over at the arena, Stable Arena, or just shooting over to Ep.3 to watch the local community colleges playing games. I just love the athletic venues as well. So, and then it gives me an opportunity when I'm at these games to sit down and just have these conversations with students that are just very different than when I'm wearing my suit at work, or I'm meeting with a student in the classroom, because I also adjunct here as a math professor. So whether I'm talking to them, it gives me a chance to really get to talk to the students. And my daughter attends Lehigh as well. So that's
so exciting. That's so exciting. I didn't know that piece. That's great. And I agree with you. The sporting events are amazing here. Also so many cool minor league that are fun to do. I literally live, I can hear the Lehigh football games on the weekends because that's how close my house is. So it's amazing how it brings communities together and families together. And I also think it gives families a really often free or inexpensive way to spend time together. And we have a lot of festivals too. So that's pretty neat.
Oh, I was going to go on about that too. Music Fest, I discovered Music Fest. First year I was here, I missed Music Fest because people were telling me about it. And I was like, oh, Music Fest, okay, whatever. And I'm sure it's a big deal. And I went in 2018. I was like, wow, why didn't I go last year? This valley is just rich with things to do.
It really is. Well, Donald, before I let you go, and thank you for spending some time with us, I want to ask you our rapid fire questions, but I want to confirm for our audience that you have not heard these questions.
Yeah, I've not heard these questions.
All right, here we go. Are you ready?
Sure.
What is your favorite hobby or a secret talent?
Oh, wow. Favorite hobby is probably golf, but the secret talent people don't know about is I consider myself a barbecue master.
All right, I love that one. That's great. All right, if you didn't have the job you have now, what would you be doing instead?
I think I'd probably be in the classroom with my dirty old math books teaching. What age group would you teach? That's a tough one. I think it still would be college students, but I could see myself trying to catch these kids at that 7th, 8th grade level as well.
I have to tell you, I was thinking that just in knowing you the little bit that I do, I feel like you'd be so unbelievable at that middle school level to spark excitement about math in young people. So anyway, maybe, who knows, next iteration.
Maybe.
All right. What actor would you cast to play you in a movie about your life?
You know, only because he comes top of mind, just because of his recent passing, that'd be Sidney Poitier.
Wow. Great one. Great
Yeah.
one. Amazing, amazing actor and man.
Oh, yeah.
All right. What is the best advice you've ever received that you find yourself passing on to people today?
2 pieces of advice. One is, be true to yourself. Don't be fake, just be who you are. I've been through that whole fake thing, never works, and it's unsatisfying. But the other piece of advice I remember given to me, that it was actually as I was preparing to deliver my PhD dissertation to my committee, they said, this person told me that, remember, you are the expert in the room. Nobody knows more about this subject than you. And you need to go out there, own that, and present it in that way. And I've held that as a part of my mantra as I'm presenting on various topics.
That is a great one, because you are being asked to present for a reason. And
Yeah.
sometimes you can forget that. That's a wonderful one. And my last question for you is, name a person who inspires you and why.
Ooh, man, name a person who inspires me and why. I got to pick out a person. Holy moly.
Now, picking out a person does not mean there are not many others, just someone that you
Yeah.
want to share with the audience.
I there's so many, but I think I still receive inspiration from my brother who passed away, my oldest brother, John Outing Jr. The way he lived his life inspires me. There's a part of John that lives within me. Johnny was a big part of his church. He always wanted people, the people around him, he always wanted them to feel good about themselves. So he would do things to try and ensure that they felt good about themselves, as opposed to feeling good about how they felt about him. And I've always carried that with me. To this day, that's another thing that people don't know about me is my socks. I wear these crazy socks, patterned socks, all kinds of different colors. And I wear that in honor of John. Johnny was one of these people that he would always wear these bow ties and these socks, and it was what distinguished him. And
I love that.
I was always inspired by him, by trying to be a better person and being myself as well.
What a perfect and beautiful way to have his memory live on through you. So thank you so much, Donald, for sharing your story. There's so much more, but just a little bit of it with all of us today. And we know that it will leave people inspired and excited to tackle whatever's next in their life. So thanks for joining us on Unscripted.
Thank you, Ashley. This was wonderful.
You're listening to Unscripted with Russo. Until next time.
If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel.
To see more of The Peak TV, check out our website, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and catch us on WFMZ Channel 69.